On this prequel episode, we're learning about the absurd and previewing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books, and in this case, books that are based on radio shows, TV shows that are based on radio shows.
Yep.
Which we'll talk about when we get into our fun facts a little bit later for the preview. But first, I have a Learning Things segment, so let's do that.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
So I was trying to figure out what to talk about for the Learning Things segment, and what I landed on is the absurd.
The absurd.
Yes. Which, before we get started with it, it's this is like a rough draft, a very early rough draft of what the beginning of an essay, like in the sense of like I did this pretty quickly. Don't take anything here as sort of like my final. I know I'm just clarifying because it's a little more what's the word not academic, but it's a little more like essay than normal.
Mm-hmm. In the sense informative?
Of not just informative, but like reads into the text a little bit more than like maybe normal, where we're kind of like talking about like, you know what I mean? It's discussing themes within this story and sort of relating them to a broader theme. And I did it pretty quickly. So it's not the end all be all on this subject, people may disagree with some sort of conclusions and that sort of thing. I just wanted to preface it with that. Also, elements of this I've taken and sort of used parts of the CourseHero.com Hitchhiker's Guide, kind of like it's like a Cliff Notes type thing. Yeah. And I was just kind of going through there, pulling some elements from that at different points. So let's talk about the absurd. One of the primary themes of the Hitchhiker's Guide, in my opinion, is absurdity, and in the opinion of Course Hero. But I agree, and that's why I keyed in, and I was like, yes. In this case, the absurdity we're talking about are events that seemingly happen at random without cause or meaning. And I want to talk about how Douglas Adams, the author, uses that absurdity to critique culture, politics, and pretty much everything, while giving voice to sort of that creeping feeling of existential dread that I think we've all dealt with from time to time, or at least most of us. And I want to first off differentiate what I'm going to or what we're discussing here a little bit from quote unquote absurdist fiction, which is kind of its own genre category. I think Hitchhiker's Guide also fits into that genre, but it's not typically classified in there, or at least like if you go to Wikipedia and look at examples of absurdist fiction, it's not listed amongst those. I think a lot of it qualifies, but I'll discuss where I think it doesn't as well. So absurdist fiction, just to kind of clarify what that is, are works that focus on the experiences of characters in situations where they cannot find any inherent purpose in life. And it's most often represented by ultimately meaningless actions and events that call into question the certainty of existential concepts such as truth or value. And that's like straight from the Wikipedia article on it. Classic examples of absurdist fiction include some authors we've talked about, or at least one author we've talked about. Waiting for Godot, which we have not talked about, but it's a book, but I think or play, but it's a movie as well. Kafka's works, including The Metamorphosis, is one of the main ones they listed. Philip K. Dick, who we have discussed. The one they specifically mention is A Scanner Darkly, which Aaron mentioned that we should do at some point on the podcast. And then much of Kurt Vonnegut's work is also, and then there's a lot more examples, but those are some of the bigger names that their works kind of fit into the absurdist fiction category. And a lot of elements of this definitely sound like parts of Hitchhiker's Guide to some extent. At the core of the novel is the quest for the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything, the first novel, and kind of it recurs throughout the course of some of the later books. In the book, the computer Deep Thought provides an answer to the question, or to the life, the universe, and everything, and that answer is 42. This answer suggests that there is, in fact, a final and knowable truth, whereas absurdist fiction tends to lean away from that into a more nihilistic sort of
nothing matters.
Of that there is no answer. It's just in Hitchhiker's Guide, it turns out that the important question becomes, what is the question? Because we now have the answer. It's 42, but what is the question? But it at least provides a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel that there is, in fact, an answer. Let's get to work figuring out what the question is. And while there are elements in Hitchhiker's Guide that sort of propose an inherent lack of meaning and question concepts like truth, that's definitely sort of an aspect of Douglas Adams' work here. Adams, I think, ultimately tosses us a bone. We have an answer for the purpose of life. We just need to figure out the question. Mm-hmm. Adams's characters, I think, all in Hitchhiker's Guide also provide different perspectives on absurdity throughout the novels. Our main character, Arthur Dent, I think tends toward the absurdist fiction sort of character as described in those works earlier. He finds life puzzling. He's uncomfortable. He suffers from this vague sense of dread that he doesn't really, because he doesn't know where he's going or why. He's kind of just drug around by the universe, essentially. He often feels he's not in control of his life. He expresses this at one point by saying, "All through my life, I've had this strange, unaccountable feeling that something was going on in the world, something big, even sinister, and nobody could tell me what it was." So that, I think that particular quote sort of fits into that, what I described earlier in the absurdist fiction genre. Mm-hmm. And I think Arthur Dent's character definitely gives us that perspective. Mm-hmm. And if we only had Arthur Dent's point of view, I think we would maybe resign ourselves to that more nihilistic appreciation of the universe, kind of more in line with, like I said, the other absurdist authors. But we also have Ford Prefect. And Ford Prefect is a very different character than Arthur Dent is, and is also sort of our co-protagonist of at least the first novel. Mm-hmm. And this is a quote from Course Hero here. "On the other hand, Ford sees life with all its unpredictability and danger as an adventure to be enjoyed." So Ford Prefect is kind of an antidote to the put upon Arthur Dent. He sees the chaos, but he finds joy in it. He sees a meaning within the chaos, and he doesn't sort of derive the same sort of he doesn't find the same sort of dread in it that Arthur Dent does, and that's potentially to a fault, and it gets them into trouble sometimes. And his sort of enjoyment of the chaos and the danger, but. I think it's a kind of a counterpoint. I think ultimately those two characters, and there are lots of other ones, but those two characters kind of give us a good balance that allows us to both appreciate the absurdity of life without getting too carried away. Because our Ford Prefect can get a little carried away.
So balance.
Yes. But, so that all being said, the absurdity I want to focus on, and what kind of the point of what I was, at the beginning of what I was getting at, when we watch the movie, and to see if it translates from the book, is less about the sort of nihilistic absurdity of absurdist fiction and more on the use of absurdity as a critique, absurd situations as a critique. For one of the ways he does it first, that I'll mention here, is a critique of society as a whole. Arthur's home is demolished in the beginning of the book because he didn't lodge a complaint with the local construction or the local city board who had these plans. He wasn't able to that had plans saying that they were going to demolish his house, but he wasn't able to lodge a complaint because the plans were, quote, on display in the unlit cellar of a local planning office. And that's like, okay, so that right there, if it just ended there, it'd be like, well, maybe he should have found out about that somehow. But this is where the absurdity comes in. Mm-hmm. In the unlit cellar of the local planning office, at the bottom of a locked filing cabinet in an unused lavatory hung with a sign warning, "Beware of the leopard." End quote. So that's where Douglas Adams takes a reasonable, already annoying part of society or something, which is, local zoning boards and that sort of thing, and then kind of the bureaucracy, and then amplifies it, sort of turns it up to 11, makes it absurd to get his point across. And I think this critique of bureaucracy is kind of something that we can all identify if any of us have ever been to the DMV or what have you. Another example, Zaphod Beeblebrox is basically the embodiment of everything wrong with politics. He's farcically incompetent and is valued for being so. If that sounds familiar or not. I could cite a million more examples. Again, I don't want to go through the whole book. We'll do that more in the episode. This is kind of where I want to hit the homework part of this. If you're watching the movie, look for the absurd in the film. How much of that is sort of included in the movie? Because in the book, it is thick. It is every page. It is constant. It is Douglas Adams' style. It's how he writes. Everything is absurd, turned to, like I said, 11. And also kind of try to keep track of what is the movie trying to do with the absurdities. Is it making a point? Is it absurd simply for the sake of humor? Because it's very rarely absurd simply for the sake of humor in the book. There are times where it definitely is just for a laugh, but usually there is a point to it. I'm going to pay attention to this over the course of the movie and see how the movie uses absurdity in relation to how Adams uses it in the book, and to see if the movie truly captures the wonderfully absurd nature of Douglas Adams. You can do the same. So there you go. That's kind of what I want to talk about.
Well,
Absurdity.
I'm interested to see.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to book facts.
Arthur, what if I told you I was from another planet?
What the hell are those things?
Attention, people of Earth. I regret to inform you that in order to make way for the new hyperspace express route, your planet has been scheduled for demolition. Have a nice day.
That's you.
That's me.
This is a Switch episode.
I got him right here. Not a ton, but I got him. Because it was either limit it to not a ton or have a million.
Yeah.
So I limited it to not a ton. As I mentioned earlier, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was originally a radio comedy broadcast on BBC Radio 4 in 1978. It was then later adapted to other formats, including stage shows, novels, comic books, a 1981 TV series, a 1984 video game, and what we're doing, the 2005 feature film. The first radio series comes from a proposal that Douglas Adams came up with called The Ends of the Earth, which was 6 self-contained episodes, all ending with the Earth being destroyed in a different way. Was the original idea, kind of where this came from. Douglas Adams eventually decided that he wanted an alien on Earth to sort of provide context within these episodes. So it wasn't just people on Earth, because, I imagine one of them was probably one of the original ideas, and I didn't find this anywhere, was the Vogons showing up and blowing up the planet to make way for an interstellar bypass. And so he figured maybe we should have an alien there to kind of provide some context for who these aliens are, or what's, that sort of thing. And he realized he needed to come up with a reason for this alien to be on Earth, and that's where he came up with Hitchhiker's Guide, because in the book and the movie, Ford Prefect, who is the alien that is on Earth, is there as a researcher for this Hitchhiker's Guide. Adams claims that the title came from a 1971 incident, quote unquote incident, it's not really an incident, in which he was hitchhiking around Europe as a young man, and he had a copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to Europe, which is a book, I guess, at the time, and he was lying drunk in a field near Innsbruck with a copy of the book, and he was looking up at the stars, and he thought it would be a good idea for somebody to write a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well. However, this is interesting, he later claimed that he had forgotten this incident himself, and only knew of it because he'd told the story of it so many times. So it's potentially apocryphal, but also, who knows? He doesn't have.
Sounds like something a drunk person would think.
He doesn't have a better explanation for it, apparently, or he didn't have a. Douglas Adams is dead now, but he didn't have a better explanation for it, so that's what he went with. The first novel, Hitchhiker, which is just titled Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, was published in 1979. And the plots of the television and radio series are more or less the same as the first 2 novels, but some events occur in different orders. The first book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is adapted from the first 4 radio episodes. Okay. So if you're interested in what kind of because that's the thing, it was one of the things I'll talk about here in a second, of me trying to figure out which books, because I have the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was a collection published, I don't know, probably like 10 or 15 years ago, which is like 6 of the stories. Which I'll talk a little bit about what that is.
And these are all like fairly short books.
Relatively,
like novellas, but when you put them all together, it's a pretty
lengthy book. Yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, after it was released, reached #1 on the book charts in only its second week and sold over 250,000 copies within 3 months of its release. And to date, it has sold over 14 million copies, which I don't have context for how many that is, but it's pretty popular. The second book, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, was published a year later in 1980. It is adapted from the remaining radio episodes, which was 5 through 12, I believe. And Douglas Adams himself considers Restaurant at the End of the Universe to be his best novel of the 5 that he wrote, which is interesting. I have read, I'll talk about it right now. So I'm planning to read the first 2 books. I'm planning to read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Restaurant at the End of the Universe. The movie is primarily, from what I understand, an adaptation of the first book, just Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm planning to read the first two because from what I remember, there are a few elements. There are lots of elements, I think, in the movie pulled from different books and stories, and even like different, from the TV show and stuff. I'm not going to watch all the TV shows. I'm not going to read all of the TV show. I'm not going to listen to all the radio things, but I am going to read at least the first two books so that I just mainly wanted a little more of a refresher. I've read the first 4 books, and I think I read most of 5, if not all of it, but I didn't read 6. So there's 6 books in the compendium I have, but the 6th one is not by Douglas Adams. It's a different guy wrote it, but based on a story that's Douglas Adams had written or something like that. It's like loosely. Anyways, it's included in this in the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide. I don't think I've read that one, but I have read at least the first 4. And I'm gonna reread now the first 2, if not 3. Again, just kind of for broader context and for more details that may or may not be pulled from later books and that sort of thing. But this main storyline is from the first book, which is relatively short. It's like 145 pages.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more of like a universe.
It really is. It's kind of tough because it's not. None of the movie is an adaptation of the first book, but no, kind of.
Yeah,
but no, also not really.
It sounds fitting, though.
Yeah, it is fitting. It is very fitting, and it'll be good though. I mean, I have seen this movie, but. It's been a long time. I saw it when it came out. I think I saw the movie before I read the books. And then I went and read the books like a couple years after that, after I'd forgotten about the movie. And now I'm doing both again after having forgotten all of it almost. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's go and talk about the movie, though.
All right.
The fate of the universe is in their hands.
Sorry, what exactly are we doing?
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't leave Earth without it.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie facts. I'm really excited to be doing movie stuff this time around.
Yes.
It's the end of the semester, so I'm in high stress mode.
Tell me about it.
This is a 2005 British-American science fiction comedy film directed by Garth Jennings.
Yep.
Based upon previous works in the media franchise of the same name.
Yeah.
Created by Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
Early efforts to bring Hitchhiker's Guide to the silver screen, like we said, it's been adapted for TV. But some early efforts to turn it into a movie started in the 1970s. But Adams turned down those offers because he was afraid that producers wanted to turn the work into Star Wars with jokes. Which I could see.
Yeah, it's not really anything. I mean, I could see being worried about that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I could see being worried about that. I don't know when Spaceballs came out, but we already have Spaceballs.
Yeah.
The movie was first optioned in 1982 by Ivan Reitman, Joe Medjuk, and Michael C. Gross. Adams wrote 3 drafts of the movie for them as per his contract. And during that time, the producers were considering either Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd to play Ford Prefect.
Yeah.
But then Aykroyd actually sent those 3 his idea for Ghostbusters, and they ended up doing that movie instead.
There you go. I was about to say Ivan Reitman's Ghostbusters.
Yeah. And Bill Murray, like I said, Robert Downey Jr., Johnny Depp, and Will Ferrell were all considered at different times for the part of Zaphod?
It's either Zaphod or Zaphod, and I can't remember.
Zaphod Beeblebrox?
I think it's Zaphod Beeblebrox. Who you said Johnny Depp and who?
Johnny Depp, Bill Murray, Robert Downey Jr., and Will Ferrell.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I can see all those, yeah.
Douglas Adams' head actually appears in the movie as a planet during Tour of the Galaxy, so we'll have to be on the lookout for that. Another thing to be on the lookout for, there's a little old lady sitting on the side street at a table during it said it was a chaotic scene in London. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't have any frame of reference for that. It's been a long time, and
I don't remember what. My guess, if it's a chaotic scene in London, is it's very early in the movie.
Yeah,
because
so there's a little lady sitting at a table on the side street, and that is Douglas Adams' mother.
Okay, yeah, and the chaotic scene makes sense. It's probably if you're watching this, is probably in the first 10 minutes of the movie, if I had to guess. Yeah. Because spoilers, we leave Earth very quickly after that.
Okay, so I couldn't find any reasons for this, but I thought this was interesting. Apparently, the bathrobe that Arthur Dent wears was the most expensive of the costumes. For some reason, I don't know why, because I couldn't find out why, the fabric had to be sewn on stage and it was flown in from Turkey. I have no idea why. I Googled it. It just looks like a normal bathrobe.
Yeah.
So if you know more about that, let us know, because I'm very interested to understand why this bathrobe was so expensive.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Like a bathrobe made of gold. Speaking of gold, the Heart of Gold bridge set piece had so many light bulbs that they could only run it for 8 minutes at a time to prevent the set from catching on fire. Which sounds fun.
Boy, remember that. This is the time before LEDs were like a big thing.
Yeah.
Because now it would all just be LEDs and you could run it forever and it would never overheat. But yeah.
So there's a character in the movie named Marvin.
Yeah, he's a robot.
Okay, so is that the robot with the round head?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. Frame of reference. Both actors who play Marvin, Alan Rickman as his voice, Warwick Davis as his body, are also... We can't get away from Harry Potter. They both played Hogwarts professors, Snape and Flitwick. Deep Thought, the computer program that you mentioned.
It's a computer, but
yes. Explains the significance of the number 42 at 42 minutes into the film.
Oh, well, there you go.
And my last fact here, this movie on Rotten Tomatoes has an average of 60%, and the site's consensus reads, a frantic and occasional funny adaptation of Douglas Adams' novel. However, it may have those unfamiliar with the source material scratching their heads. So I'm excited.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I recall from I really remember very little about this movie. I think I saw it when it came out, maybe in theaters in 2005. Haven't seen it since then. And like I said, I remember hearing great things about the book after that, and I read the book sometime in college, I think, and this movie came out when I was a sophomore in high school, or something like that. So it was like 5 or 6 years later that I read the books, and I remembered nothing about the movie then, and I remember nothing at all about it now. I remember not loving the movie, but I think I was mostly just confused a little bit. Not like wildly confused. Like I remember laughing and enjoying parts of it, but just like not quite getting it. I'm very excited, having read the books and rereading it again now, to watch the film and see what I think.
Well, I'm very excited to be confused.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Like I said, I think I've heard people say that they actually think it's a pretty good adaptation, all things considered. And now it is, and I don't know if you had this in there or if we mentioned it, that Douglas Adams did write a lot of the movie before he died. He had been working on the movie, and then they took it and finished kind of adapting it and that sort of thing. But it is a lot of his vision, supposedly, or from what it sounds like, which was interesting. He died right before it came out, like 3 or 4 years before. I think he died. He died. Yeah, not I think. I know he died on May 11th of 2001. So yeah, like 4 years before it came out. But he did write a lot of it. So I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I haven't looked.
Yeah, we haven't looked for it yet.
Yeah, but to sum up, this is the quote I forgot to write down. But apparently so this movie is almost, but not quite entirely unlike the book. So if you're a fan of the book, you may recognize that quote. That is from I believe the first one. Arthur is having a terrible day, and he goes and finds a Nutrimatic machine, which is like a food replicator from Star Trek. And the Nutrimatic machine provides him with a plastic cup filled with a liquid that was almost, but not quite, entirely unlike tea. So that's how I read somebody on the internet describing the movie adaptation of the book, which again, kind of all of the different versions of these stories are like that. They're all slightly different and mixed around.
Like he edited with every different version that he did, which we've said before is something that a good adaptation should do.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that holds up, I think.
Yeah, it's very much a sort of while he was alive, these stories were kind of very much a like living document that was just like he was constantly kind of every time he rewrote it, he kind of did what he wanted with it. Or, for certain mediums or certain
Never
things
really
worked better.
Let the clay dry.
Yeah, just kind of kept moving around with it. So, cool.
That's cool.
Yep. All right, so Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy next Tuesday. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary. And everybody else,
keep reading books.
Keep watching movies. And keep being awesome.